and welcome to No Spin. I'm Nidhi Razdan. The horrific murder of 26-year-old Shraddha Walkar, allegedly by her boyfriend Aftab Poonawalla, is a crime that has shaken the country's conscience. The sheer brutality and cold-bloodedness of Aftab's actions has overshadowed another story here, that Shraddha was allegedly a victim of domestic violence. Her friends say that Aftab would regularly beat her. She even feared for her life, but was not in a position to walk away from him so easily. But instead of focusing on this, the love jihad bogey is back in the discourse, driven by senior BJP leaders who are using this crime to polarize once again. So you have the Chief Minister of Assam, Himanta Sarma, saying this while campaigning for the Delhi municipal polls over the weekend.
हमारा देश में लाभ जिहाद का खिलाफ हमें कानून चाहिए और देश में कोई आफ्ताब जैसा शख्स निकाले तो सीधा फांसी काट में जाना चाहिए ऐसा कानून हमारा देश को चाहिए.
The Chief Minister of Assam, no less. But you had Union Minister Giriraj Singh the other day talking about Muslim boys seducing Hindu girls before chopping them up. This is what he was quoted as saying just a few days ago. But today, let's ask all these leaders, how will you label the following murders? These are a number of murders that have taken place over the last few days and over the last few years. There is Abhijit Patidar, who apparently slit 25-year-old Shilpa's throat. This happened in Madhya Pradesh earlier this month. He posted a video claiming that Shilpa was unfaithful. How are you going to label this particular murder? Then there was another one, Prince Yadav, who allegedly killed his girlfriend and dumped her body. This has also happened in Uttar Pradesh just this month, just a few days ago. There are a number of them that are going to come up on the screens. By the way, Prince Yadav also chopped his girlfriend's body into 6 pieces. A 22-year-old woman from Delhi was found dead in Mathura just the other day. Again in Uttar Pradesh, the body was stuffed in a suitcase. How will you label this particular murder, may I ask you, sirs? A 19-year-old receptionist killed at a resort, allegedly by a BJP leader's son in Uttarakhand. Remember that story that made huge headlines? The body was then dumped in a canal. How are you going to label this murder? The point is, the love jihad bogey is just that, just a bogey. And the real issue when it comes to Shraddha Walkar's murder is getting completely buried in the politics of polarization. The question we're asking today is whether this is being done primarily to polarize the election discourse. Is this a political abuse of Shraddha's murder? Let me first go across to Member of Parliament from the Shiv Sena, Priyanka Chaturvedi, also joining us, author and activist Gurmeher Kaur. We'll be joined shortly by the BJP representatives as well. But Priyanka Chaturvedi, to you first. It's an extremely misogynistic narrative that is out there, apart from, of course, the very communally charged love jihad one.
Absolutely. And it is quite depressing to know it. You know, you mentioned in your statement that it has shaken the conscience of India. I'm sorry to say it really hasn't, because people have reduced Shraddha to her religion, to her life choices, to even sitting in judgment about what she did and why she did. Her Instagram is being trolled long after she has ceased to live. Instead of talking about justice for her and justice for many such women who are abused on a daily basis in marital relationships as well, we are moving away the focus to something which are non-issues. And that is what should be depressing us as a society, because we are reducing our conversations not to provide justice to women, not to ensure that they are create safer spaces for women, address domestic violence, address marital rape, address crimes such as these, but you're reducing it to their religion, life choices, and sitting in judgment about women, like it always happens. Right from Kaushal Kishore, the union minister, to Himanta Biswa Sarma, they're all politicizing it because it suits their narrative at this point in time, since Gujarat and Himachal have gone into an election. It is extremely unfortunate. But
Priyanka Chaturvedi, to some extent, it's sad that you see political leaders talking about love jihad and all the rest of it. And in a way, you kind of expect it now, because it's just the way things have become, unfortunately. But then you see the social media commentary of other folks who are just chipping in and agreeing with this. And like you said, you reduce the person to their religion. It's not that gruesome crimes haven't happened I mean, irrespective of religion, which is the point that we're trying to make. The focus needs here to be on domestic violence, on domestic abuse, and how to help women in those situations. We're just completely losing track. And what's sad is that there's huge social media commentary supporting this.
Absolutely. I'll give you two examples. The two reasons that are being cited and sitting in judgment about Shraddha and this particular incident is one, the religion angle. Two, her choosing to live in rather than marrying the said individual, the said criminal, the said psychopath. Take the case of Sushil Sharma and Naina Sahani case. Both in a relationship, both married, both from the same religion. What does he do to her when he suspects her of having a relationship? He cooks her up. He cuts her into pieces. He kills her, cuts her into pieces. It shook the nation. 23 years later, the man is now a relationship counselor. He's free, out on bail. He's a relationship counselor. The lady in question, Naina Sahani, is long dead. Her parents died in old age, hoping that the justice has been served. But 23 years later, he's out. Gulatis of Dehradun. This is a 2010 case which says has inspired Aftab Poonawalla to the extent of executing whatever he executed. Cuts up his wife into 70 pieces. And we're talking about religion here. We're talking about live-in relationships here. This is not about live-in relationships. This is not about religious marriages. It is simply an act of crime, and which has to be looked at that from that angle. And also someone needs to question as to why, despite her facing this kind of brutality from Aftab, she's not willing to leave him. Because there is no social net to safeguard such women who have made these life choices, who separated from their families. They feel that the society will not accept them. They feel that the society will not be able to address the challenges. So they continue living in these unhappy spaces. And that is something that we should be addressing as well. But unfortunately, we reduce it all to two major points of sitting in judgment about a woman who's long dead.
Right, absolutely. Gurmeher Kaur is a young woman. How do you feel about this discourse today?
I definitely feel horribly, and also because it's something that I personally have been through in 2017, where the discourse was not so much about the protests that were happening, but about my upbringing. And I think there is this very much an element of sensationalism and sexism within with how broadcast media portrays female stories and what they are saying about it. And I think I do bring it down to very much there is an argument to be made that broadcast media does it, but I think there's definitely an argument to be made that this is very much a supply and demand issue. The broadcast media does sensationalize stories, presents sexism because it is something that people tune into. And it's terrible, and it's unfortunate because then the coverage of such a gruesome crime turns into sermons. And I think it is as much a critique about media and their pursuit of TRPs as much as it is a critique about what Indian audiences are sort of tuning into, because media does cater to audiences and sort of the customers that they want. And I think it's all really tragic what it does to how.
I agree with you about the media coverage, and I think that it's become very voyeuristic. It's taken the conversation in a different way, but we don't control what leaders say. They are supposed to be public representatives who are in positions of responsibility. Shaina NC joining us as well from Mumbai now, spokesperson of the BJP or coming in her personal capacity today. Shaina NC, how do you look at this discourse? I mean, when you have leaders like Himanta Sarma, Giriraj Singh, bringing in love jihad into this whole Aftab and Shraddha angle, does it not demean the conversation that a genuinely horrific crime has happened here, and we're distracting it by bringing in polarizing issues again?
Nidhi, I want to tell you first that the only reason I accepted to come on this debate because it is about women and women's safety and security, which I think is a much larger issue than any kind of political one-upmanship of people making comments and counter-comments. Let's keep that aside. I think that if we really look and analyze Shraddha's case, there are 2-3 things that come to mind. One is that it was a gruesome, horrific murder which only a perverted mindset of a male misogynistic upbringing deserves no kind of rationale of it being interfaith or being aligned to a particular community. It was a horrific murder, and a horrific murder of somebody who had no concept of humanity. So I think we need to treat it such. Let's keep aside all these other conspiracy theories of who belongs to what community. This is a dastardly act and needs to be condemned in totality. Now coming to the point of, do women have the right in the 21st century to be part of live-in relationships or have the discretion of who they want to date, choose? Yes, obviously they can, but at the same time, when it comes to your safety, security, there are few kind of precautionary measures that a lot of crimes which happen against women, we come to know that, you know, the cruelty and the kind of registered crimes are far fewer than what it should be. And that requires a lot of courage, maybe even for Shraddha in the past to have come up and spoken if she felt there was a kind of monster in the live-in partner. All of these aspects need to be looked at holistically. So my only point is that let's not make this a faith issue, because this is a dastardly act that needs to be condemned in totality, and it needs to be condemned unequivocally. So
I appreciate that.
Theories.
China and see, one appreciates the stand you've taken on this, and I think you've opened the door to a bigger conversation then on the help that women in abusive relationships need. And one of the things, you know, I'll take this back to Priyanka Chaturvedi, is Priyanka, the fact that, you know, as you pointed out, women don't just walk away from domestic abuse for so many reasons. Fear, the fact that families often abandon them, like in Shraddha's case, her father wasn't speaking to her for a long time. And also it's exposed that we don't have safe spaces to go to. If a woman wants to leave her home and she doesn't have another home to go to, where are the shelters? Where are the helplines? You know, there are very few, aren't there, to actually help them?
Absolutely. And that is why I continue to say the focus should be on, when we are talking about women's safety, are we also creating spaces where they can be looked after and they have that confidence, that ability to step out of the homes without having judgmental uncles and aunties sitting and talking about how they should behave in such in societies, or putting the onus on a woman to carry forward a relationship despite it being abusive. I think it has to do with the upbringing. It has to do with society stepping in. And I'll just take Gurmeher's point, and she made a very valid point. It is about the TRPs, and I will not reduce it to just news channels. Look at the movies that hit over 100 crores. The movies that are toxic in nature about relationships, they are the ones which are being consumed by the audience. So we need to discourage this mentality of looking at women as a commodity, as a property, and continuing to look down at women as something which is about ownership. What happened today in Azamgarh, the Uttar Pradesh case, is a case in point. We need to sensitize. Police services we keep talking about, politicians we keep speaking about. I think it is high time we sensitize the society and we question the upbringing of such people who think it is absolutely okay for men to go out in the world and not give women these safe spaces.
And movies that glorify stalking and make it seem like it's perfectly okay to be stalking a woman that you supposedly like. We've got Khushbu joining us as well. Khushbu, thanks so much for being with us. She's, of course, a leader of the BJP, artist and actor. And Khushbu, today, I mean, we heard China very strongly saying, let's not make this about faith or identity. This is a horrific crime. It has to be condemned across the board. And we need to look at the larger issue of how to make spaces safe for women. Would you agree with that?
Maybe absolutely. I think what has been we have been witnessing of lately about men, the way women have been treated, and the number of murders what we have been witnessing. I think we need to sensitize this world. We need to sensitize that women are not an object. We have to tell them that women need to be treated with equal respect and dignity. I think all of us in some way become responsible the way we bring up our children at home. Some children are witness to women being abused at home verbally, physically, and some women actually keep quiet. So that gives an idea to the other kids, whether it is a girl child or a male child, that men think that it's fine to abuse women because this is what the atmosphere I have grown up with, women are going to keep quiet, and women grow up with the thought that my mother was quiet, the other women members in the family were quiet when they were abused, any which ways, and I think I have to remain quiet. I think this is a narrative which we strongly need to change and say that any kind of abuse will not be accepted. And I think we need to start from home. We need to start teaching this lesson from home.
Are you a bit tired as well, though, Khushbu, of some of the sermonizing that we're seeing, whether it's from, you know, political leaders, even BJP leaders, you know, now questioning those women who have live-in relationships, as we were talking about the love jihad bogey earlier. I mean, doesn't this actually distract from the real issue here?
No, I think we just need to understand that any political party, for that matter, you cannot polarize a murder. You cannot talk about love jihad. You cannot talk about the problem. I am a Muslim married to a Hindu, and I was in a live-in relationship with my husband for 5 years before I got married to him. So I don't see a love jihad anywhere. I think it's just the mentality of the people who are in these kind of toxic relationship. They see it is coming on their faces, yet they continue with this kind of relationship. What I also see is, and what has been the case with Shraddha, and I have been, reading what her father had to say, the family had to say. I mean, they had cut off complete ties. Her dad was not even aware that she had moved to Delhi. I mean, this is what is very, very saddening. You don't give up on your children. You don't give up on your children. They might be absolutely wrong. And as a parent, it is your duty to make sure that the child is safe and sound. You know, bring them back on the ways and say that this is how you don't give up on your child. And this is what is really, really hurting me. Every child makes a mistake. Every child, there is a phase where you go on a different track altogether. But I think as a parent, you need to understand them and you need to bring them on the right track rather than giving up on them. That is not the right parenting. And I'm not blaming anybody for that matter. But I am saying, as a parent, I feel that I am equally responsible for my child. So I think we all need to learn a lesson from this.
Absolutely. I think that's been very well put. And we pointed out the fact that, you know, Shraddha her father was not speaking to her for so long. And perhaps she just felt that she couldn't turn to her family in times of distress. Shaina, and see, just to come back to the point of what we can do in terms of a systemic response to victims of domestic violence. Does this case highlight the need to have better shelters and better facilities for women? There are shelters, there are very few of them, and many of them are run like prisons. You know, women don't feel safe even going there. So is this something that you all could maybe push, with the government to pay more attention to?
So I think the first most important thing, Nidhi, is not to be judgmental. If we as a society can understand that, you know, different women go through different experiences, some good, some bad, some pathetic, and it needs a lot of courage for them to come out and speak out. And for that, you're right, they need a support system, they need shelters, they need to be told they will not be ostracized or judged for their choice of partner or choice of what went wrong. Because if we are going to sit on judgment, we will just continue to dissect the way we think, which is not necessarily correct. Right now, there is need not just for shelters, but there is need for understanding that we live in a male-dominated country, a male-chauvinistic society, where these perverts are not to be judged for anything else but the atrocity they commit. And in this case, I mean, it is the worst. There can be no rational logic. This is an animal. So rather than getting into the nitty-gritties of what the girl did wrong, think about what the gruesome crime is and what these men do wrong. These men who believe that they can just chop women to pieces and get away scot-free is not happening. And for that, you need to have many such women who, if they are going through domestic violence or if they are in toxic relationships, they need to have the guts to speak up, and at which time I think society as a whole needs to hold their hand, even if their families don't, even if political parties do or not. We as a society need to be sensitive and not judgmental. That is the key. If we are going to sit on judgment, वो क्यों उनके साथ रहती है, वो क्यों उन्होंने ऐसा किया, उसने क्यों ऐसे कपड़े पहने, get out of this mindset and understand it is the bete that we need to सिखाओ and not the beti. It is the बेटे को सिखाओ, बेटे को समझाओ, बेटे को सुलझाओ और बेटे को समझाओ कि आप ऐसे हरकत करेंगे तो आपको सजाए मौत मिलेगी.
Absolutely. Though, of course, Gurmeher, you can come into this. What we domestic violence victims are often just scared. They're so scared that they may actually be killed if they walk out of an abusive relationship. And it's very hard for other people to understand why it's not easy to just walk away.
I think ever since the Nirbhaya case happened, there has been a lot of conversation about women's safety in general. But I think I do want to talk about the point that you made about shelters. Just today, this news came out about 5 Uzbek women who were rescued from trafficking. And the statement they made was they left the shelter because it was not livable. And it was only much later, with the help of the NGO, the police of Chanakyapuri, finally rescued these women from the trafficking and then sent them to the Uzbek embassy. I feel there is a very important. There is the reason why women who are in abusive relationships, when they don't have structural familial structures to support them, there are also no government structures to support them. You have these Uzbek nationals who are trafficked, and I think what does that say about government infrastructure when it comes to women's safety? And I think that really needs to be, like you said, a very important conversation. We need that infrastructure. We need that, we need that sort of almost assurance to younger women, old women in domestically violent relationships or households, to know that even today, if I leave, at least I have a place to go. If it's not my family's home, then it's what is provided by the government for me. But that is lacking, and I think that's a big issue.
Absolutely. Last question to the women politicians on this panel. Priyanka Chaturvedi, to you first. I've often said, and this happened, when the protests broke out in Delhi, when the Nirbhaya gang rape happened, and people, the Congress would say, oh, why are you politicizing a gang rape? And my point was that, well, it should be politicized because women's safety should be a conversation we should have front and center and make it a big political issue. It's not been one. Now, how can you guys make this a more constructive conversation about the safety of women, about things like domestic violence, which at the moment is being reduced to these very misogynistic narratives led by male leaders who are, talking about everything from live-in relationships to her haircut to, love jihad and all that nonsense. We all agree that this is bakwas. So how can you help change the discourse and make it a constructive political issue?
No, Nidhi, I have been raising my voice even in the Women Empowerment Committee. And with regards to shelter homes, I'd just like to say one thing. This has been an area of concern which I have been sharing in the committee, that we have too few shelter homes and very few which look at women empathetically. Women who face these kind of crimes and have stepped out of homes. The shelter homes are terribly understaffed, under looked after. So those are challenges that we face. And for state governments also to make it a priority is something that I continue to speak on. But I also do say, and I also do believe, in the parliament, our representation is 14%. 86% of the parliament is male dominated. The men parliamentarians will also not look at it as one of the various other issues that they have to handle. They will have to start prioritizing this. And they should not be looking at women as victims. They should be looking at women who are 50% of India's population, who deserve that 50% of space even in the parliament. But since they're not there, they have to take the onus of being able to speak up with women. So we will continue to raise our voices like right now Khushbu is doing, Shaina is doing, Gurmeher is doing. We do that in the parliament, but we are terribly outnumbered. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to raise some noise, make our voices heard, and ensure that every policy that is made from a more empathetic angle rather than through an angle of, oh, हमने policy बना दिया, अब महिलाएं जूझे से, हमने तो empowerment दे दिया और देश की महिलाएं empowered हो गई. society में change लाना है. And that becomes a government, a policy, and a civil society work
I think that's a
hand
good
in
point
hand
about
together.
underrepresentation of women in lawmaking, because Khushbu, would you agree with that that's part of the problem? But in your own way, I think it's so great that you and Shaina and all of you have come here today, and this conversation has not degenerated into some horrific TRP battle. Gurmeher, I'm sure you would agree that, at least we're trying to look at solutions. Khushbu, I mean, if there was something you could push or advise at this point in terms of government support, let's say, for women, what would that be?
I think, Nidhi, first we need to form a committee across the political line. Women, strong women like Priyanka, myself, Shaina. I'm sure you have very strong women from different parties. We have so many parties in our country representing their own states, representing women, speaking on women empowerment. I think we need to bring women collectively from across the parties and make a committee and say that these women will be handling the problems of each state. And it's not only about the state, but overall the country. And we need to bring these kind of shelters where women feel safer. Women do not feel safe in shelters what we have across. So as a government, I would very humbly request my government at the center to make sure that they form a committee and bring women across the political lines and say that it's your responsibility to see that women are safe and go work for them, build these shelters. We are there with you, central and state, both together. But because the women of this country do not belong to one particular state or do not belong to one particular political party. They belong to this country. They're the daughters of this country. They're the women of this country. And I think we as women across the political lines, the borders what we have, break those barriers, bring these women together, strong women together, build these shelters, gain the confidence of women who are in these kind of toxic and abusive relationships, and gain their confidence to come and speak to us, tell us that this is where you are safe. We will bring you back to normalcy. We will support you. We will be empathetic towards you. And we will make sure that you are safe and sound. I think we need to work together. Collectively, we have to come together as a society, as women across the political lines. And I keep stressing this, that we do not belong, we need not belong to any one particular party to work for this. We have to come together collectively, and we need to stand together to take the women forward.
Thank you for saying that. I'm completely out of time today. Let's see over the next few weeks if we can change the direction of this conversation and learn something from Shraddha's murder rather than reducing it to the kind of misogynistic commentary that we have seen. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today on this program. Thank you.